Hi guys, I have decided that I am going to share how I make my 1 millimeter um, paper quilling strip flowers. I've taken bits and pieces from many people that I have watched on YouTube channels and combined them into what works best for me, and I wanted to share that. First, obviously, you need the 1 millimeter paper quilling strips. I use my 1 millimeter paper quilling tool, a regular tool. I don't buy the fancy shapers for paper. This is actually from a Wilton cake kit, cake decorating kit, and you get about 10 pieces for $10. So it's an inexpensive way to get all of, this is one part of about 12. It's a great way to get different shapers. Whoops. These flowers, I'm going to put a little bead in the middle. Sometimes I don't put any, or I put just a little quill loop. I always have paintbrushes in water to get glue off, some paper towels to dab it on, or a washcloth to keep it from getting too wet and destroying the paper. I have my glue and my sponge, and I have learned this goops up with a lot of glue. And now what I do is I'll just fill it with water overnight, and all the glue comes out of the sponge and it's like brand new again, because the water dissolves it all. Then I just rinse it out in the morning. I have my pliers for my stems, and these stems that I found again are from cake decorating. The World of Sugar Art Scott Clark Woolly brand. I got them on Amazon, but they are made with cotton thread around them. They're really, really soft. They're cotton. My scissors, and I think that's it. Sorry, my first YouTube video, so of course I am going to fall over my words as I go until I get more comfortable. But I take my 1 millimeter paper quilling strip. I always feel for the right side up, but I always feel like there's a front and a back to the paper. The front is where it's more rounded, and the back is a little more hollowed out, and the coils just look prettier if you quill them with the rounded side out. I just put my paper in the quilling tool. I leave a little edge because it's so tiny you're not going to see it, and it really eliminates any hole, and it makes it a lot easier to coil it when you're not trying to keep the paper right on the edge. And I just hold it flush on my finger, and I hold the coil flat with my thumbnail. I never get manicures or my pretty nails anymore because I think I break about 3 nails a day quilling. I just push the coil off, apply a dot of glue, and I even sometimes brush it flat with the edge, and I close the coil. The next step I always do is I smooth the center. Sorry, my dog is ringing the bell. She thinks she needs to go out. I smooth out that center bump. I find the edge where I stop, and that's always where I make my crimp, so you don't see it anywhere else. My little crimp for the edge of the petal. Then right on that, I give it a little squeeze up at the top, and that gives you a perfect petal. Now, in order to keep it in shape, I use the front side that's concave. So on the back of the petal, where it's rounded, I take my paintbrush, I dry it off. I put just a dot of glue. Hold it with my awl so I don't get glue on my fingers. And I just paint the glue on the back. And that will keep your coil from falling apart. I made, these are actually blue. I made enough petals. I make 4 petals per flower. And I'll make 4 real quick so you can see how I put them together. Again, hit the paper just with a little bit of an edge, and this quilling tool is awesome. I sell it on my website, thepaperquillingshop.com, along with 1mm paper. Everybody asks me why I don't sell other sizes, and the reason is there are so many well-established, good paper quilling companies in the United States that carry every size except 1mm, that there's really no point in me trying to compete for that business when I just saw that there was a need for the 1mm strips in the United States. I got frustrated because I would get commissioned to do a piece, and if I didn't have all the supplies on hand, it would take 4 to 6 weeks to get supplies in. I don't know if I showed this, but I always clip off the ends of the strips so you don't ever have that glue bump. Again, I want to start with the rounded side, the smoother, the prettier side up or out on the outside of the coil. This tool makes it so easy, I think. And it also makes 1mm quilling so less intimidating, because even though it really doesn't have an edge and it is so much smaller and finer than regular quilling strips, you're able to use the same techniques. Most people use, a toothpick or use their fingers to coil 1mm, and since I found this tool, it has cut down on my time quilling, as well as, them falling apart and starting over. This just makes it so easy. Sorry, I have pretty bad eyesight, and I usually do this about 1 inch off my nose. I went to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor told me, your eyesight has gotten significantly worse in the past couple of years. And I think I know why, although I refuse to do anything about it at this time. It would be great to have the surgery, but it seems like there's just not time. And again, I'm going to just push out that bump in the middle. Find where the end of that paper is. Make that the point, squeeze it just a little to make a tip. It doesn't take much pressure. And another thing is, I glue the back of the paper after I get it shaped a little bit, but I don't do a full shaping of the petal until after I get the glue on it, because sometimes it will fall apart. So I shape it just enough so it has the petal shape. And again, we're sealing the paper together. So sometimes the center of the coils like to pop out and create kind of a tornado from the center. And once that happens, you can spend 10 minutes trying to get it back together, or you can just pitch it and start over. I have learned to pitch it and start over. Normally after this dries, I take a petal, I just put a little line of glue on both sides. I take the other petal, put them together at the point, so I have two. This one's still pretty wet. Whoops, I need glue. Stick the other two together. This one is really wet. I'm not sure it's gonna stay. In that case, I'm gonna use my board and press and seal. I think you probably heard it. Everyone says the big secret, but press and seal is just wonderful plastic wrap to put over your boards to keep the glue off the boards, and it's also great to do your work directly on so that your quilling releases from it if you are someone who does a pattern on plastic. Sorry, that one piece is really wet. I just put a little dot of glue in the middle, and I am squeezing them together at the point. Once you have the petal together, like this blue one, you can see there's hardly a center, so you can almost get away with not putting anything in the center, or you can put one of the little flower beads in there. Sometimes I think these flower beads kind of cheapen the look of the delicate fine paper. This is the first time that I've used them, and I don't think I'll use them again. But then I take a green strip, and I do this all production line. I make a ton of petals, then I glue them all together, then I make a ton of, I cut all my stems down, I make a ton of my green connectors. I'm doing the exact, I'm not doing the exact same thing. This is going on the back to put a stem on. Therefore, I do need a hole. So I'm going to use a regular quilling tool, and I like Quill Creations because it is tinier than most. And I do it the exact same way. But this time I'm depending on a hole because I need to put a stem through it. I'm just using full strips for all of these. If you cut them in half, they are like really, really tiny, and you can't see the detail or anything. And one full strip on the green. The process is the same. I'm gonna get rid of the hole. Now this time I ran it around a little to create the curvature, and I'm gonna put glue in it. This is where my tool, you can use the shapers, you know, the boards. I prefer to do it in my hand because as you're creating this dome, 1mm paper really wants to break apart and crack. And once those two layers come apart, you can't get them back together. So I get the glue in them and I curve them out. Usually the first time, I don't curve it so much into a dome because I want the glue to take hold a little bit before I do the final shaping. Then I have these beautiful cotton stems. They come in a big long package. So this is about, I don't know, 1/4 to 1/5 of the size. I just cut them with my wire cutters. You got to be careful and kind of push it hard and cut it, or you're gonna get the frayed edges where you tried to pull it apart. So you want to have good solid cutters. I make it has to fit inside this 1mm cone. So I make a very tiny fold over on the end, and then I take that and just crimp it off to the side a little bit. If you go flat, it's not going to sit inside that dome correctly. It's going to want to punch out the side because if it lays horizontally, it's going to want to come out down near the bottom. If I do it on an angle up vertically, it will lay along the inside curve of my connector. What is it? Steeple, staple, I forget all the parts names. I take my awl, because I have glue in here now, and I want to very carefully kind of widen that hole. Sometimes when you go in, that inside rim is going to want to go into the center too, and then the hole is going to be too big to hold the wire. So that's why you want the glue in there good and dry. Send this through the hole, and you can see how it lines right up along the edge of the dome or coil. I fill it with glue about halfway and twist it around. If you don't twist it around, there's going to be a space underneath the wire where no glue was able to get behind. So I make sure there's glue underneath and behind, and then I fill this whole cup up. It's totally filled with glue. Then I take my petal, I center it on the back. Whoops. Center it on the back, and I kind of push the center kind of into it. Now the glue is going to ooze out a little, so all you have to do again is take your paintbrush, make sure there's no glue oozing out, and then I literally set them down to dry. Then, once it's done, I take my little fake centers and I cut them far enough that it's flush, and I have a little bit of room to put glue on them. If you do it inside or closer to the thread, the point's gonna come down so small, you're not gonna have any surface area to glue it in. And I forgot, perfect time for your reverse tweezers. And these are really fun when they don't take hold and they pop and they go across the room. And I very carefully just place it in the center. And that is how easy a 1mm flower is. So, I made a bunch of them last night. I have yellow, white with blue centers. I have pink flowers that I still have to put the stem on and the blue. But then you can wire them together. You can use the styrofoam or arrange them in any way, but with that stem on the back, it's going to give you the 3D effect. So that's how easy it is to make a flower with 1mm quilling paper.